Hi everyone. I just wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about the Adler reading, explain kind of why I had you guys read it, and then show you how I apply his advice. So first, I wanted to start by saying that yes, I know this is an old text. Um, I know it might have been a little boring, but this was something I read my first year in undergrad, and it was something that really stuck with me. It changed the way that I read in college, and I found it to be really, really useful. So I hope you guys will find it useful as well. So first, this is a picture of Mortimer here. Like I mentioned, it's an old text. It's from 1941. But that being said, I think that his advice about the importance of reading in a certain way is really valuable. He says, full ownership comes only when you have made it, the book, a part of yourself. And the best way to make yourself a part of it is by writing in it. So his advice is to always write in books. Um, okay, so what if you don't really like that idea? Why is it really important now? Why is it really important for college? First of all, it keeps you awake. If you're actually doing something with the text, you're more likely to be engaged in some way. I know a lot of us use coffee as well, but this is a good way to keep your mind sort of working as well. It also keeps you thinking. So when you're writing in the book, you're thinking about what's most important. You're prioritizing. One thing I always do, like you'll see in a minute, is write questions in the margin. Um, so I'm always thinking and responding to what's being said when I write in books. Finally, it helps you remember the thoughts you had while reading. You guys have, I'm sure, multiple classes and you're reading multiple things for them. And it's really hard for most people, myself included, to keep everything in mind that you've read. So if you read very carefully the first time and you keep good notes, then you'll remember, it will help you remember what you've read. It will help you comprehend it. And then also you'll have notes there that you can return to later. Okay, so how do you go about marking up a book? As you probably, hopefully remember, Adler gives you several techniques. I'm going to share a few of my favorite ones. First, underline main points. Sometimes this is all I do. At the very least, this is something that I do. It's something you can do pretty easily. And it's just, I think, one of the most important habits you can get into. Another one is circling key words. I do this with words I don't know or I don't really understand. I do this with key people. I do this with repeated words, things like that. But sometimes it's very helpful for me to pay attention to the real important words that are within a passage. And then finally, write in the margins. This is another one of my favorites. And you can write anything in there. You can write any kind of notes or responses. And this is a real way that I really engage with the text and do the thinking while I'm reading. So I know a lot of your copies are digital, and so I'm not really sure what you guys prefer to do, whether you print out your readings and mark them up that way, or if you read everything on the computer. Especially when I'm reading on the computer, I found that I have to be writing in some way. Note taking, I think, is also a good thing to do, but I personally really prefer to actually annotate right in my texts. It's easier for me, and I kind of think it's a little bit less time as well. So I'm going to show you a couple examples of what this looks like digitally before I show you my own. First, you can pretty easily do highlighting like this, and I'll show you how to do that. Then some people can get really kind of carried away. To me, this is a little bit busy. There's a lot going on. But you can see kind of the handwriting. I guess people can do that pretty easily with iPads and things like that. And then, you can do some in-text things and some circling and things like this. This example is probably the most similar to what I do. Okay, so this is a text that I'm going to annotate. It is a literacy narrative, but not one I'm requiring you to read. It is a good one, so I'll post it in case you're interested. It's called Superman and Me by Sherman Alexie. And the reason why I chose to annotate this is because it's sort of short and I can talk through it pretty easily. So first, before I do anything, and I'm actually going to pull this page down a little bit so you can see, I've got this open in on a MacBook and preview. I'm sure PCs have other kinds of versions. I'm trying to remember. I'm not exactly sure what the PC one is. Hopefully you're familiar with it. If you have questions, I'm happy to help you find a version of this. Whatever you use to open PDFs should have it. Okay, so before I start to annotate anything, I do kind of skim through it to see length and also to pay attention to some things like paragraphs. So and I tend to actually read or look over the first sentence of each paragraph. Good writers usually have some kind of main point in the first sentence of each paragraph. So I can see here he starts with, I learned to read with a Superman comic book. So we're getting an image of literacy right there. The next paragraph starts with my father and goes on. So this is going to be probably about his father. I can remember picking up my father's books before I could read, so then a memory of him and his father reading. So I think his father is a key figure in his literacy history so far. Okay, at the same time, I was seeing the world in paragraphs. And what I can just kind of notice by running my eyes through this is that paragraph seems to be an important word here. And it's a pretty long paragraph, so there's something key going on there. A smart Indian is a dangerous person, widely feared and ridiculed by Indians and non-Indians alike. Okay, so now we're seeing something related to maybe the implications of literacy here. Okay, then I refuse to fail. Then what I notice here is some short, choppy sentences. So really kind of moving into a little bit more analysis. It's something more than just description of literacy. So you get the idea. And then when I scroll down further, I notice, okay, the paragraphs are getting very short and kind of choppy here. So I'm aware that maybe there's going to be a big change that comes here. He's going to do something different. Okay, so I'm going to scroll back up to the first paragraph and just kind of talk you through what I would do. And the first tool I'm going to use is just the highlighting tool. So I'm going to show you how to get that. First, you click here, show edit toolbar, and it shows you all the different things you can do. So you can probably guess this tool rectangle allows you to make squares around things. If you click on it, you can see it's going to show up in red. I'll just show you what that looks like, but I'm not going to use it. The circle is an oval, so you can kind of do the same sort of thing with that. However, if what I like to do is kind of change the colors around, so you can do it by clicking here, like I showed you, but didn't explain as I was doing it. Pick a color, and then it changes. This is just a line, good for underlining. This lets you pick the width. I don't know why you would want a thick line, but if you do. It also has an arrow tool, so if you want, you can kind of point to things like that. I found that tool to be pretty helpful. This tool here is the text box tool, so if I want to write something in the margin here, which I will, all I have to do is click, and then I can type something like key moment. I would probably be more specific than that. And if you run out of space, you can just hit the enter button. And then, so you can do that, and you can always go back and add. You can also move these around just by getting it boxed that way. I'm not really sure what this is. I don't really use it. Oh, This looks like it's just a note. So if you don't really, if you have a lot to write, maybe like, ooh, I do not like this font, but I'm sure there's a way to change it. I noticed Alexi using good description here by, let's say, varying his sentence length. So this is something I noticed later, but if I wanted to make a little bit of a longer note, I plan to try this out in my narrative when I talk about, okay, you can see the idea here. So if I actually want to plan some things while I'm reading, this might be a good function for that. And then it stays small. You can kind of move it around and then just click on it once and it'll, I think, pop up. So this is pretty cool. I really like that a lot. I actually have never used that function, so it's good to know. I'm not sure how to change the font. That's something I would do because I can't stand that one, but I'm not going to mess with doing that now. Okay, so these are the tools that you have over here. Now, like I mentioned, I want to start with just highlighting. So if I just click the markup tool here, I like to stick with yellow. Then I'll be able to highlight in yellow. So I'm going to read through this and show you how I've marked it up. I learned to read with a Superman comic book. So I think as a first line, that's kind of key because we're getting that first memory. Okay, simple enough, I suppose. I cannot recall which particular Superman comic book I read, nor can I remember which villain he fought in that issue. I cannot remember the plot. Okay, now what I'm noticing is all of these things that he cannot do or cannot remember. So what I'm wanting to do is kind of note that repetition, which I'll use with the circles here. So cannot, nor, that's not the same word, but it's kind of a negative word. Okay, cannot again. Okay, I'm going to go back to my highlight tool. Okay, I cannot remember the plot nor the means by which I obtained the comic book. What I can remember is this. I was 3 years old, a Spokane Indian boy living with his family on the Spokane Indian Reservation in eastern Washington state. We were poor by most standards, but one of my parents usually managed to find some minimum wage job or another, which made us middle class by reservation standards. I had a brother and 3 sisters. We lived on a combination of irregular paychecks, hope, fear, and government supply or surplus food. Okay, so here we've got a short memory of reading, but then the detail isn't really about the content. Instead, he's giving us what seems to be maybe a first memory. I was 3 years old, a boy living with my family on the reservation. This is another thing you can do is just double click a word and it will highlight. Okay, we were poor by most standards. So to me, what strikes me about this is it seems like he's recovering a first memory here. And it's in his literacy narrative in a paragraph about learning to read, but it's the first memory seems to be about being poor. Okay, so this to me seems like an important moment and a note that I would want to be sure I remember. So I'm going to change this to Arial because it's easier for me to read and make it a little bit smaller. I'm also going to change it from black so it stands out, make it green. Okay, so I'm going to type here first memory reading and earliest memory of being poor with a question mark. I think that's kind of an odd or an interesting kind of double memory paragraph here in the beginning. So so this gives you an idea of how I mark up books as I'm reading. I know it's a little bit slow, but it does get quicker, and I definitely think it's worth it. So I'm gonna post, and I'll just scroll through this quickly for you, but this is the whole text. And I did some more annotating just to show you. You can see the circled words of repetition. Superman comic book seems like a key word. The next paragraph is really about his father, like I kind of anticipated. And I underlined what I thought were some kind of key moments. And I'm not going to explain or read this all to you, but you can go through it, look at it, let me know if you have any questions. Here's another thing I do is ask some questions. So here, Alexi moves from first person, telling the story from the position of I, to third person, where he refers to himself as a little Indian boy who teaches himself to read. So that's an interesting change that I notice. Okay, so you can kind of see, again, here I'm doing repetition, short sentences. And then here, I guess I'm trying to get at what the main idea might be. Okay, so I will post these. Again, I really encourage you to try some of these out. If you want to talk about it or you want me to look at anything you've annotated, I'd be happy to do that. And hopefully you find this to be a useful kind of skill. All right, I look forward to our conversations this week or next week, really. It's Friday evening that I'm making this now. But anyway, I look forward to talking to you guys about the literacy narratives, to hearing more from you, and to seeing how you respond to a couple different ones. I'll see you online.